Daniel Miller a while ago in Gonzales when there was a rally there, and I was introduced to him. Some of our members brought him to our attention. Daniel is the president of the Texas Nationalist Movement and has been an outspoken advocate for Texas independence since 1996. As the head of one of the largest and most influential political organizations in Texas, Miller has extensively researched and engaged the issue of self-determination, not just for Texas, but as part of a growing global trend. So I would like to welcome Mr. Miller here today to all of you.
Okay, so let's hope I don't have to pull this microphone off and do it Wayne Newton style. Although I guess I am kind of dressed Vegas style, right? I think maybe a few more sparkles on my coat, and we can do it really Wayne Newton style. So, well, look. First and foremost, I want to tell you how much I appreciate the invitation to come here and speak. I'm gonna have to hold it.
You're gonna have to hold it, I'm afraid.
Okay. I'm gonna have to do this karaoke style.
There you go.
Is this where we're at? Okay. Well, look, let me just go ahead and say how much I really do appreciate the invitation to speak here. It is always a great opportunity to get back in this area. One of our founding members is actually from just right over in Cuero. Unfortunately, Charlie's no longer with us, but it was literally one of the very first pictures we ever have from our organization is of Charlie signing the charter. And so this place always holds a special place in my heart when I get down here. So let me just go ahead and get the elephant out of the room right now. You heard in the introduction, the name of our organization is the Texas Nationalist Movement. Let me go ahead and extend a great thank you to the current President of the United States, Donald Trump, for suddenly making nationalism no longer a bad word. If only he could have done that about 22 years sooner, he would have made my life a whole lot easier. Now, that being said, you also heard in the introduction that our organization is focused on the issue of self-determination. If you've heard the term Texit flying around, you're welcome. We're the ones who talk about that all the time. We talk about Texas independence. And although while I'm not here specifically to talk about a vote on Texas independence or a Brexit-style vote here in Texas, understand that when we talk about the Alamo, we are indeed talking still about Texas independence. But just to go ahead and kind of take the taboo off of this subject really quick, let me ask you a question. Raise your hand if you agree with this statement. Texas is a free and independent state. Okay? Well, congratulations all you hand raisers. You're in awfully good company because those happen to be the very first words of the Texas Constitution. Article 1, Section 1 says that Texas is a free and independent state subject only to the Constitution of the United States. And it says that the perpetuity of the Union depends on the right of local self-government unimpaired to all the states. So if you believe that Texas is a free and independent state, congratulations. You just essentially passed the first part of the test of becoming an elected official in Texas. For those of you who don't believe that, I'll give you till the end of the remarks today. And if not, I bet the lovely incoming president here can point out some places you can move to in Los Angeles. Now, that being said, absolutely our organization believes in the independence of Texas. Okay? But our mission is this. It is the political, cultural, and economic independence of Texas. And while the media loves to hone in on the controversial aspect of political independence, right? Because the mainstream media, by and large, are not fans of the idea that people should have the right to govern themselves. Is that what you're seeing on TV as well? Is that what you're seeing out of the mainstream media? Because that's what I'm seeing. That the mainstream media, by and large, are not fans of people wanting to govern themselves. And as such, the idea of political independence or a people engaging in the right of self-government it becomes controversial, right? They dump on it all the time. Anyone who espouses the belief that the best people to govern Texas are Texans is marginalized and referred to as fringe. But let me tell you, that's not the experience at all. Our organization, per capita of registered voters, is the single largest political organization in Texas outside of both mainstream political parties. You know, much to the chagrin of the libertarians, I'm pretty sure we have more members of our organization than they have of their political party, but that's another story. That being said, our philosophy and our belief about Texas independence is that it rests on those three pillars: the political, the cultural, and the economic. Now, we didn't just arrive at this. This is not something we pulled out of a fortune cookie somewhere. This is what we've seen over the last 70 years as countries around the world have gained their independence, is that the ones that had the longest lasting independence were countries where those people fundamentally understood that their cultural independence and their economic independence were as important as their political independence. And it is that belief that spurred this growth of nations around the world. You know, we talk about it as a global trend a lot. But you have to realize that at the end of World War II, there were 54 recognized countries around the world, and at the end of the 20th century, there were 192. Now, those countries didn't just come from space. They didn't just fall from the sky and suddenly there were these countries. Those were all people, just like us, who said, we believe that we should be able to govern ourselves. We believe that we have our own culture and we should protect it. And we believe that our economic interests should be put ahead of the economic interests of other countries. That's what they did. And that's exactly what we do. But look, here's what it boils down to for us. And this is where we're going to start talking about the Alamo. I knew you probably thought I would never get there. But you have to understand that for Texans, when it comes to the cultural pillar of our independence, the Alamo sits at the absolute base. You see, the identity of who we are as a people, and don't get me wrong, around the world, Texans are recognized as their own unique people. Even Steinbeck said it in Travels with Charlie. Texas is a state of mind. He said Texas is a nation in every sense of the word. Around the world, it's recognized. And one of the most recognizable symbols of who we are is the Alamo. So it should come as absolutely no surprise that those people who don't like things like, you know, the sovereignty of the state or liberty of the individual, or a lot of the things that everyone here believes in, at least I'm gathering that from all the red shirts, either that or I just stumbled into a communist rally. But the people that don't like what it is you stand for and what I stand for and what we as the people of Texas stood for, and frankly, what the people at the Alamo died to protect, the Alamo is their number one target. Because if you can change the story of the Alamo, you can change for future generations what it means to be a Texan. To stand in defiance of tyranny, to stand and fall in defense of liberty and of independence. So our organization, when we first started, back in 2005 was when the TNM was formally founded. But we became increasingly aware of issues surrounding the Alamo. Now you have to think about this. Let's look at the Alamo as it stands today in comparison to what we know about 1836. When you look at the Alamo today, what you see are two remaining buildings, restored buildings, but two remaining buildings from the original 1836 battle. The Alamo, the entire mission complex, where the battle was fought, was much larger. Now, if you are so inclined, you could go to San Antonio and you can hunt around for all these little markers that they have for the original boundaries of the fort. You know, you might have to fight off some people that are going into the Ripley's, believe it or not, museum there, right? Or you may have to, shoo away a street preacher or a beer cart vendor or something along those lines, but they're there. As a matter of fact, I think in one of the ultimate ironies, where Colonel Travis was shot and ultimately killed, that part of the wall right now stands the federal building, oddly enough. But when you go to the Alamo, understand that just about everywhere you place your foot is where somewhere north of 180 men, plus the women and the children and the civilians that were inside the Alamo, that's where they huddled up for 13 days until the defenders were slaughtered. Now, I want you to picture any other battlefield that you've ever visited. Gettysburg. I remember as a child going and visiting the Vicksburg battlefield. That was another siege. Or as I talked to my Greek friend, he said when he went to Thermopylae, because that's one of the clearest examples, the clearest analogs is between the Battle of Thermopylae and the Alamo. But picture any of those places and now superimpose what takes place on those grounds at the Alamo to those places. What would happen tomorrow if all of a sudden beer carts and street preachers and the Ripley's, believe it or not, museum decided they were going to build at the Gettysburg battlefield? Right? But you see, that's what has been allowed to happen here in Texas for a very long time. Now, let's rewind the clock to get into a little more history. Were it not for two women, Clara Driscoll and Adina de Zavala, at the turn of the 20th century, the city of San Antonio would have allowed the Alamo to be a parking lot. They saved the Alamo. They saved it. Clara Driscoll paid her own money to purchase what was remaining of the property, shaming the state of Texas into actually going ahead and reimbursing her and taking title to it. But were it not for those two, the Alamo would probably be a parking lot. You would probably go there today and it would be a Walgreens or a CVS, and there would be a little plaque saying that some men died here for something, a couple hundred years ago. But because of what they did a tremendous service to Texas, preserving that legacy for us, where we can go now and plant our feet and stand in the shadow of heroes. So most of our work as an organization has been done over time to sort of fight against the city of San Antonio and its encroachments on the Alamo, its permissiveness on this battleground. One of the things that we did, you may have heard about it, it was in the news, Kanye West. I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy today. Apparently that changes on a regular basis now. He's always been a bad guy in my book because of this one thing. As a publicity stunt, he decided that he wanted to do a showing of a brand new video called New Slaves, and he wanted to project it on the front of the Alamo Church. And with a group of volunteers and a bunch of phone calls and a bunch of emails, we shut that down. But that's no different to me than Ozzy Osbourne drunkenly urinating on the cenotaph. It is that level of disrespect for a place that Texans hold sacred. So we fought little battles and little skirmishes like this for many, many years. And in 2013, and I actually printed this up because I wanted to bring it to you guys today. In 2013, we finally had enough of these skirmishes. And so we communicated, after talking with thousands of Texans, we communicated what our demands were, what we wanted to see, both to the city of San Antonio and to the state of Texas, because they come into the story a little bit later too. But this is what we said, and I'm pretty sure most of us could probably agree with this. We want to see the Alamo battleground restored to its original footprint of the 1836 battle. Not some kind of, well, we've got part of this, and so what if a dozen men died here? Let's have a fun run. Let's have a 5K race. Let's start it right here, which is kind of what happened the other day. But we want the battleground restored to its original footprint. That battle was fought throughout that entire complex, and it should be honored as such. We wanted the battleground closed off to vehicle traffic. We wanted vendors restricted outside of the battleground complex. Why turn a hallowed ground, what is essentially a cemetery, because they piled the bodies and burned them, right? So their ashes are scattered everywhere. Why would they choose to have a flea market there, right? Would it be okay if we went down to the Arlington National Cemetery and put up a Ferris wheel? Absolutely not. Then why is it okay at the Alamo? We wanted a museum complex to house all the Alamo artifacts, and we believed that the battleground should be transferred, the entire complex, from the split authority that there is now, because remember, the state owns the church and the long barracks and the garden behind, and the city of San Antonio owns the plaza out front, which is why you have so many of these problems. The state, by and large, wants to make the ground hallowed. The city of San Antonio wants a Fiesta Texas in downtown so they can collect some more money. So we believe that the Daughters of the Republic of Texas should be restored back to their management of the property, because were it not for them, it wouldn't be there. And then number 5, and this is going to seem odd, but I'm getting there, I promise. We wanted to ensure that the Alamo was removed from the World Heritage Site program under the United Nations and UNESCO. Well, I am very glad you all clapped for that, because honestly, it has been over time one of our most esoteric demands, the one, oddly enough, that got us more flack than anything else. Now, I'm pretty sure we all understand what UNESCO is about, right? The United Nations Educational Scientific, that's what they do. But under the UN, what most people don't realize, and what we call liars for even talking about, is that because the United States signed on to the World Heritage Site Convention and is a signatory to the United Nations Treaty, the moment that the Alamo entered into World Heritage Site status, all of a sudden Texans no longer had sole control over the Alamo. And even in the face of Supreme Court decisions like Missouri v. Holland and a whole handful of others that said exactly what we said, we were still told that we were promulgating fake news. That is until the General Land Office got a letter from the National Park Service, who administers the UNESCO and the World Heritage Site Convention in the United States. They got a letter from the National Park Service saying, hey, we hear you're making some changes to the Alamo. Remember, now you have to come to us to make sure they're okay. So in the process of trying to make a buck with what's going on with the Alamo, by throwing it into the World Heritage Site status, they've essentially federalized it, and now they're going to globalize it. Don't believe me that UNESCO is a political body? Just look at what they've done to Israel over Jerusalem, where they've attacked their sovereignty, their very right to govern themselves, using the culture as the weapon. So I say all that to get around to what has happened recently. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Reimagine the Alamo plan, right? And you probably are feeling a whole lot like we are, which is, I would just prefer to remember it. I don't need to reimagine anything. The Alamo is the Alamo. That is the place where Texans stood, fought, died, where Travis drew his line in the sand, where they shot off a cannon at Santa Ana to communicate a message that said they are not going to surrender. It is the very heart and the very soul of Texans. I don't have to imagine anything new about the Alamo. But yet, it seems that the city of San Antonio, in conjunction with George P. Bush at the General Land Office, are content to look at the Alamo as a cash cow. So, many years ago, they started this entire process. They call it the Alamo Master Plan. Okay, now let's don't mention the fact that there were 2 or 3 other plans that had already been proposed ahead of this. They decided they were going back to the drawing board because we have to reimagine the Alamo. So, what is their first step? Consult experts? No. Consult some, the Alamo Defenders Descendants Association? I'm sure they'd like to have a say. Not really. Consult the DRT? Well, that's going to be hard. I mean, they had to sue you to get their stuff back. No, what they do is they hire a designer who's been known for designing other things, like the complete political correct whitewash of Monticello, right? Because we can't have heroes anymore, right? And some others. So they hire him. His name is Richard Skarmaeus. Remember that name. So Skarmaeus comes in, and he has to admit right off the bat, I really don't know anything about the Alamo. So my first job is going to be to hire a team that will explain the entire thing to me. Not kidding, it was reported. So Skarmaeus, a non-Texan, by the way, is brought in, does not understand the Alamo, and he's been given the task of coming up with the Alamo Master Plan. Well, look, I get it. Some people have a learning curve, right? Sometimes you got to get some on-the-job training. But when it comes to the Alamo, probably not the most appropriate thing to do. So throughout this process, it became pretty clear what Skarmaeus and the mindset was, but particularly why they hired Skarmaeus. And let me get to this because I want to make sure that I quote him exactly, okay? Skarmaeus was asked in an interview specifically what he felt about restoring the Alamo to its 1836 appearance, okay? That had been a point of contention. Some people wanted to have the actual battleground restored to the way it looked. Not just the footprint, but the way that it looked. And so, you could understand, his answer when they asked him why not restore it to its 1836 appearance. And so you could imagine he would come up with some sort of logistical problem. Maybe it's money, maybe it, you can think of any number of reasons that you could possibly take as legitimate. But the first indication of what the problem here is comes down to his response to that question. This was quoted in several news sources. San Antonio Express News was one of them, but this is what he said, word for word. He says, the events of 1836 were just one small chapter in 10,000 years of history. That's your Alamo Master Plan designer, folks. But that's how they feel about it. As a matter of fact, you come in and in an op-ed that he wrote to the San Antonio Express News, in defense of this project, this is what he said. He says, no single entity has an exclusive ownership of the entire site, the plaza and the shrine and its grounds. It is our obligation to listen to all voices, opinions, and views before we begin the planning process. But yet, most of the Texas heritage organizations that would have a vested interest in the Alamo and the narrative and the story were locked out of the discussion. Instead, what we get is something that, let me just read this to you. It's from the Alamo Comprehensive Interpretive Plan. Okay, they have a lot of long titles for these reports, and trust me, there's probably about 1,000 pages worth of documentation that we have that was all produced by them. But here you go. Here's the goal. Straight from the work product of all of those voices. They say, additionally, over the last 20 years, perspectives on cultural identity and contextual history have evolved, allowing for a comprehensive and inclusive story using evidence-based research. Get ready for it. While the 13-day battle at the Alamo in 1836 is clearly the best known and celebrated segment of history at the site, it is critical that multiple cultural perspectives and stories be presented. So, although it is not in the Alamo Master Plan, let me explain to you what this essentially says. This essentially says that, Santa Anna had a point of view. Those soldiers were, those Mexican soldiers, even though they were trying to, basically enslave us and commit genocide, they were heroes too. Because that's the viewpoint that they're articulating. Now, this is the same, if you follow this out to its logical conclusion, what they're talking about, it essentially means that this same logic could be used to erect a monument to Japanese airplane pilots at Pearl Harbor. I mean, they were coming at it from a different cultural perspective, right?
Right.
And, we should. So anyway. But this is sort of the tail end of the whip, right? You look at the Alamo Master Plan, $450 million price tag, by the way, which a lot of it came out of the rainy day fund in the special session, last session. By the way, they wrote a blank check to George P. Bush without a plan in hand, and they just said, hey, here's some money, let's just get the ball rolling. And that came out of your rainy day fund. So when you hear people talking about candidates in here making promises that they won't touch the rainy day fund, the economic stabilization fund has a specific purpose, understand that the General Land Office and the city of San Antonio got a nice fat check, a blank check for their pet project and their, the Alamo Casino and Hotel in downtown San Antonio. But that being said, even with the $450 million price tag, the issue and the big fear that we have is that while we are getting so much of what we asked for in the Alamo Master Plan, right? They're restoring it to its original footprint. Yay, score one for the home team. Okay, great. They're building a world-class museum. Great. They've got to, or Phil Collins is going to come take back all of his artifacts. That was part of the agreement, by the way. So check. They're going to close off the battleground to vehicular traffic and vendors. Check. We're doing so good. So what's the problem? And I literally had someone ask me the other day, Daniel Miller, what are you complaining about? You're getting everything you want. I said, no, I don't think I am. Because it's not just about restoring the battlefield. It's not just about putting up a museum or keeping the beer vendors out of the plaza, off the battleground. It's really about honoring what happened there on March 6th, 1836. And as long as that is in danger, it doesn't matter how they spruce it up, what sort of coat of paint they put on it, anything else they do. If there is a risk that they are going to diminish the story of our people, then we should all be up in arms. We should all be furious. And the only thing that has allowed them to get this far is that the light of day has not shone on it. They have not felt the light and they have not felt the heat from the people of Texas in a sufficient and adequate way. And honestly, even with that, I have a legitimate concern as to whether or not they would even listen. You see, all of this actually goes back, and I told you I'd get there, it all goes back to 2007, when the idea came to place the Alamo as part of the San Antonio missions and into the World Heritage Program. And you see, two of the main driving characters in making that happen were the Castro brothers. Now, let me tell you, I was raised in a home where my parents had very decidedly pointed political viewpoints. I mean, I'm standing in a room full of people with red shirts. I'll let you work out what those were. But, so I know what sort of influence parents have, right? The cultural building block of Texas is the family. Right. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Right. So these ideas get communicated down, and this is the challenge for me. And I'm going to give you this quote because I love to, I hate when I'm misquoted, so I want to make sure that people are quoted correctly. The mother of the Castro brothers, member of La Raza Unida, right? But this is how she felt about the Alamo defenders. She referred to them as, quote, a bunch of drunks and crooks and slave-holding imperialists who conquered land that didn't belong to them. So think about this for a moment. As Texans, we derive so much of our cultural identity from what happened at the Alamo, right? And for this generation and back, we have been taught that it is a valiant stand against tyranny in defense of liberty and independence, right? Are we on the same page so far? Now understand that even though we're getting the battlefield restored, and we're getting a museum, and we're getting all of these wonderful bells and whistles, understand that the people that are in control of the story are the ones that are going to make the difference to future generations. So for people like us, we've already heard from the Alamo Master Plan designer. Well, that's just one small chapter in 10,000 years of history. We've heard the committee that put together the plan already say, well, you know, we're going to take a lot of different viewpoints in. And then we've heard the viewpoint of the people who are really ideologically driving this process, with a viewpoint that is going to potentially communicate to future generations that those people that we felt were heroes were in fact drunks, crooks, slaveholders, imperialists, and conquerors. That's the story that's going to be told. Now, if you think this is hyperbolic, if you think I'm just exaggerating, let me rewind your clock just 2 months. Did you guys hear about the fight at the State Board of Education over what they're going to teach the children about the Alamo defenders? There was a debate. Can you believe this? There was a debate on removing the term heroism from its relation to the Alamo defenders. The committee that made the recommendation, it was a subcommittee of the State Board of Education, the committee that made the recommendation said it was the name of streamlining the curriculum, right? But in questioning, they came up with their real reason. Well, heroism is subjective and it's a value-charged word. Well, yes, it's value-charged. They're heroes. Don't you think we should celebrate our heroes a little bit more, folks? But yet, we are in a situation where in our State Board of Education, we're having to go fight the Battle of the Alamo all over again. And not because there's an army at the walls laying siege for 13 days, but because they want future generations to no longer look upon that battle as heroic, upon those defenders as heroes. They want to take that away. So the battle's not for us, folks. The battle's for the future. The battle is for honoring the legacy of those people who fought and died valiantly at the Alamo. So while this battle rages on, understand that there are some things that we can do. There's some things right now. When you leave here, there's some things you can do. Number one, lucky us. The legislature is getting ready to go into session. And lucky us, there are already 2 bills that have been filed in the pre-filing window that are going to give us an opportunity to cut this nonsense out. Number one, State Senator Bob Hall filed Bill SJR2, which is proposing a constitutional amendment that would say that any decisions about the narrative of the Alamo must be made by the legislature, not by some committee of unelecteds appointed into 3 shell game nonprofits by George P. Bush, but by the Texas legislature. Not the city council of the city of San Antonio, but the Texas legislature. So SJR2, make a note of that one because it is going to be massive in this session. The next one is a bill that was filed in the last session. It will be filed in this session by State Senator Brandon Creighton. It's called the Monument Protection Act. Okay? So while the progressives in the left are busy out there trying to emulate the Taliban and topple down monuments, we've got legislation, oddly enough, that stalled in the last session. It got nowhere to protect monuments. However, the fear that people have over the cenotaph at the Alamo, it being taken down and moved, would have been covered by that monument protection bill. So Brandon says it is being filed in this session again. We're already lining up supporters for this particular bill. I don't think he's got a bill number for it this go around, not yet. But I'm expecting it to be filed this week during the pre-filing window. So we'll make sure we swap information or whatever, and I'll keep you up to date on that particular piece of legislation. But the other one is a bill that we wrote and that we're hoping to get filed through either James White or Steve, some of these, a couple of other state reps and potentially a different Senate sponsor, that would remove the Alamo from under the authority of the General Land Office, place it back under Texas Parks and Wildlife, and restore the rightful managers of the Alamo, the Daughters of the Republic of Texas. So let me get down to really and truly what this means. When it came time to field criticism about their plan, they said, well, we had over 60 meetings, and we did not hear this criticism, this complaint. And my first response was, well, I guess if you'd have let the people of Texas know you were having a little get-together, we'd have probably shown up. But there's this. We're going to have to be heard. They did not hear us then, but they have to hear us now. And if they cannot hear us directly, we must make them hear us through the legislature. January the 8th, the session starts, and it's going to be a real banger, folks. So make sure you get plugged in. But let me take this to the final part, because I know my time is short and I've gone way over. It's because I was enjoying the chili. Thank you. But let me get down to this, because there is some question about how important this is, what it is they fought for, why the Alamo is so important. I've said so much about it, but I'm going to quote to you, and I'm going to end with the words of Colonel William Barrett Travis, not from the letter that you've all heard, but from another letter. He wrote actually several letters from the Alamo. This is what he says. He says, let the convention go on and make a declaration of independence, and we will then understand, and the world will understand what we are fighting for. If independence is not declared, I shall lay down my arms, and so will the men under my command. But here's the clincher, folks. If you want to know why those men perished, it's this right here. He says, but under the flag of independence, we are ready to peril our lives 100 times a day. They felt that independence, that free and independent state at the very beginning of our Constitution, they felt that it was important enough to stay and die for. The least we can do as recipients of their legacy is ensure that they are remembered properly. So with that, I thank you, thank every one of you, and just leave you with the words, remember the Alamo.
What was that bill number?
Oh yeah, Q&A, right? SJR2 is the one that Bob Hall has filed. We're waiting on a bill number from Senator Creighton for the Monument Protection Bill, but you'll hear a lot more about that. You'll hear that title floating around. And then there is the Alamo Defense of the Alamo Act that we authored. That matter of fact, let me do this. If you want more information on this, let me give you our website. You're going to love how easy this is. Are you ready? It's TNM, like Texas Nationalist Movement, .me. It's .me. TNM.me, like literally 5 letters. It's a great domain. It fits on business cards really well. TNM.me. And when you go to our site, you'll see right there on the main page, we have what's called the Alamo Action Guide. It'll send you all kinds of reports and information, pretty much every bit of information that you want to get up to speed on this. you can get sent right to your email, and you can download as much of it as you want, including phone numbers for the reps, the center, I mean, everybody that you need to get in touch with. So there's that. Anyone else have any other questions?
We need to do that.
Yes, ma'am.
How about information that we can tune into about the legislature and what's going on with that? Is that gonna be on your website?
Yeah, we keep, every session, we keep a running tally of our legislative priorities, and obviously the Alamo is one of those. We're gonna keep everyone up to date about that. But look, I would recommend, if you go to the Texas Legislature's website, you can sign up for an account, and when you see these bills come across, they will send you alerts. They'll send you emails to let you know. One of the things that we know beyond a shadow of a doubt is that if we can get any of these bills into committee, we've got to overflow those committee hearings. Citizens, you know, the beautiful part about the Texas Legislature is you can go to any committee meeting and you can testify. Lord knows I've done my share of them, sitting in those packed rooms over a whole slew of issues. But it is your opportunity to make an impact, and they respond to it so much better than emails and phone calls. They want to see you face to face, because if you had the gumption to shamble up there to the Capitol and walk those labyrinthine halls and show up in a committee meeting and sit, bring snacks, just a tip, and sit through all of that to speak your piece, they listen to that a whole lot more than somebody sending them a terse email. Guaranteed.
And to that remark, let me also say, when you go to testify, you don't have to give a big, long speech. That's right. You don't have to give his speech. You say it from your heart. It can be short, but you're there in front of them. You're testifying your feelings to them. And that goes for any legislation that you want to testify for. But
well, and let me to that end, let me just go ahead and invite you guys. We're doing something, the organization's doing something next month that we've never seen done before, and that is we're holding a free week-long legislative conference all online. Many of the people that I mentioned, State Senator Brandon Creighton, State Rep James White, Steve Toth, who just got elected over in north of Houston, Weston Martinez. I mean, there's a whole slew of people that are going to be presenting at this, including Rachel Malone. You guys know Rachel. Rachel's doing her Learn to Testify seminar, all 2 hours, and it's all online. You'll be able to participate, Q&A from your computer, everything. And it's going to be a week long. So if you go to our website, you'll see information about it, or get with me afterwards. I'll give you the direct link. That's
sounds
it.
wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you so much. Thank you.